Good morning. Welcome to another week of Dubai Works Business Podcast. I almost said podcast like the Arabic. Okay, sorry. Yeah, this week's guest is Charlie Wright, the co-founder of Hopi. Charlie is a Dubai-based entrepreneur who previously had a venture in the gaming industry, and his latest business, Hopi, is a new premium daily contact lens brands that sells direct to consumer via Hopi.com. Hopi exists to disrupt the antiquated contact lens retail model, which in itself is really interesting, and bringing high quality daily lenses to consumers at honest prices. They also work with the world's leading lens manufacturer, Pegavision. Hopi lenses launched in the UAE and is set to expand across the Gulf and then into Southeast Asia. Today, we'll be talking about how Hopi came about, and also direct-to-consumer business, what you need to think about, and then raising funds and planning for growth. Welcome, Charlie.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
We were just discussing, it's nice to be back in the studio. How have the last few months been?
Yeah, we were just saying it's been, I'd say tumultuous has been probably the key word. A whole host of different emotions from personally to the business perspective side of things. But yeah, like we said, we had a coffee with a couple of friends in February, and we could never have anticipated what was going to come about in March. But in terms of business perspective, we launched the business properly in January. We had 2 months of real lessons learned, crazy times, some positives, loads of negatives. We went into March thinking, right, we've got all this, hypothetically, we've nailed everything now. We know supply chain works, we know the internet, and we know our sort of marketing strategy, products all there. We started March incredibly well. First 5 days, we were sort of touching wood everywhere to be like, let's just keep this train going. And then, suddenly, mid-March, everything sort of changed for us. And the whole world essentially as well for various different reasons. So it's been crazy. But I think sort of on the flip side, it's probably been the best thing that could have ever happened to an early business like ours.
In what way?
I just think it's really streamlined our approach in two ways. From an organization, an operational perspective, we've dialed in on profitability. How quickly can we get to the goal of being a profitable business? Whereas so many players in the direct consumer space in the States have got acquisition, at all costs. Can we get market share very quickly and go from
customer acquisition?
Customer acquisition, yeah. It's essentially, you look at sort of Away, which is a luxury travel brand. They do suitcases. Essentially, they found a niche product, which were suitcases that had no sort of emotional attachment to them whatsoever. They create a brand around it. Yeah. And now Away is, $1 billion company. There's a lot of other examples, and really for them, their primary metric was customer acquisition. How many customers can they get? And once they've got sort of dominance in that space, then it's path to profitability. I think it's the same with a lot of businesses in this region.
So just taking a step back, so direct to consumer as a model is often related to subscription. It's not sort of B2C. There's an element that you don't have a bricks and mortar per se to start off with, so you don't have a distributor, and that you're actually going direct to consumer. And even though many of the subscriptions been around without the internet before, even though many of the parts of this business industry and this kind of valuations against it are old, some of the new model around VC and the example of Away, they're new. So, but do you think that, as you said, do you think that there's already a template for it?
If I go right back to the start, sort of direct to consumer, I think it's a relatively new term, especially in this region. When we looked at setting up Hopi and we looked at the internet ecosystem, in my opinion, we're sort of in this region 10 years behind that of the Western world. We had Souk acquired by Amazon in 2017, but Bezos has been up to his tricks, for years previous to that. The idea of tokenization and subscription payments, even online payments, obviously the Visa and MasterCard numbers, crazy high cash on delivery compared to online transactions. So I think, and obviously, especially culture-wise here, malls have always been a standard bearer of free time. You know, it's a communal place. We'll go shopping, and that seems to be the retail bricks and mortar is massive. Direct to consumer really is an element of brand building. I think for me, it's away from the bricks and mortar, like you said. It's essentially the way I like to call it, and my favorite phrase is a DNVB, so a digitally native vertical brand. So a brand that has been created that starts on the internet. And with that, by say vertical, they own the whole supply chain.
Vertical in your case would be?
Vertical, I mean in such that, say you look at any other sort of traditional retailer, they're buying products from a distributor and selling them. By vertical, I mean with a DNVB, you are owning the whole supply chain. So you produce the product, you distribute the own product yourself via your own channels. Sorry, just completely. So from, say if you look at our product, although we don't own the supply chain, you know, we're using a partner to help us. There are a lot of other companies that own the factories, produce their own products, but you know, we take the product straight from the factory. We look after it ourselves. We distribute it via our own channels and solely our own channels. And then we own that whole sort of profile. We own essentially the customer because we know exactly what they're doing through our channels. And so direct to consumer is essentially creating your own product and taking it straight to the consumer. And in this region, I think direct to consumer is a relatively new concept. Although Huda is unbelievable, you know, probably the earliest DNVB in the region.
Beauty space,
yeah, absolutely fantastic. But for Hopi, we were, you know, one of the first after Huda to sort of go direct to consumer. But in the US, there is 100% a template to go and find a product, you know, sell it online, own the channels, and grow in your space. And I think, especially if you look in the Western world, you know, with rent prices so high, people were forced to go and sell on online channels. And I think we're seeing the same effect in this region. You know, rent prices have gone, you know, through the roof. And obviously with COVID-19, you know, we've gone a decade ahead in days, you know, especially in that digital acceleration period. And we've seen businesses, I'm not going to say brands, but we've seen businesses that have been in the retail space for, you know, 20, 30 years, basically go online overnight, you know, have been doing 0% online sales up to this point, which I think is, you know, negligence in that sense. The D2C mantra is, you know, go where your customers are, and your customers are online. You know, it took us 6-7 months to get one product online and get it working. So can you imagine a lot of these companies, especially in this region, have gone and put thousands of SKUs, you know, on these platforms, and probably none of them are using Shopify, and trying to sort of create an e-commerce business out of nowhere.
So Hopi, we'll talk about the product and the problem that you're solving in a second, but just kind of tapping into that, touching on that. So what for this region, you mentioned it's kind of languishing behind, but also that you're doing a different model, that you're focusing on what's the word? Profitability.
Yeah.
Sorry, rather than, you know, pure acquisition and scale in that way. Is that because of the region, and what other kind of decisions have you made that you've kind of responded to consumer trends here?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I remember a Kareem press release a couple of years back when they raised, I think, one of the earlier rounds, and the notion mentioned profitability in such that we're not profitable now. We're looking to essentially get market share, and then we'll look at profitability. And I think over the last 3 months, you look at every major technology business or business that has gone on to say, we want to get market share. You know, Airbnb, 1,600 people lose their jobs. You know, this idea that
they want to get profitability now.
You know, it's a case of we need to streamline our operations because money just doesn't keep coming from nowhere. I think from a personal perspective, like, nobody prepares for the worst, really. You know, you always potentially think that, you know, somewhere along the lines you're
optimistic entrepreneurs,
of course, right? But, you know, had you said to me in this time last year, have you got you know, money to put to one side that is there if the whole world goes to pot, you know, would you be able to continue the business? So I'd be like, that's not going to happen.
Do you think, just on that, you mentioned kind of January, you know, all the trends that come out and the predictions for the year, do you think we take these seriously? Not that someone was saying that COVID's going to happen and the world is going to go into lockdown, but there were some things. There are lots of predictions. There's lots of research. There's lots of data. are we actually reading these and going, well, this is likely, and we need business continuity planning, we need this sort of stuff?
Yeah, do you know, personally, no. I mean, in the last sort of 12 months, I've tried to shy away from as much news as possible anyway. It's just doom and gloom, essentially, right? And, you know, I remember being in the car years ago, and I think there was Ford had employed a futurist.
Okay.
They had a whole team that were employed to predict the future. And I was listening in the car thinking, this is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd love to ask them, like, how many times are your predictions being correct?
Yeah.
And, you know, probably, you know, I mean, if somebody predicted COVID, then congratulations. But I think that consumer trends from an e-commerce perspective, yeah, we listen to them. But I think a macro trend, especially forecasting or predicting a global pandemic, is you know, far above anyone's head. But is identifying what is controllable and what isn't. What can we attribute to us? What can we attribute to the market? Because I think a lot of people will look at it objectively and just try and blame everything on COVID. And doing that, I don't think you can progress. We found sort of the biggest takeaways from our business by saying, right, this is attributable to us. We can change those things. That is out of our hands. You know, let's not get caught up on those, because there were a lot of days when Christian, my co-founder, and I were on our phones to each other thinking, what are we going to do here? This is crazy. How can we carry on? Are we going to be okay? But I think once we took a step away and identified, right, well, we can change these things, you know, and put these in our favor. We'll listen to our customers on these things. Yes, the market is fragile right now, but there's still an opportunity for us.
So you managed, from your launch early this year, you managed to already have customers who were using the contact lenses, and then COVID happened. And what happened then? Yeah,
so like I said, we grew really. January was an interesting month. We tested loads of stuff, and we had good traction. February, I think we doubled growth again. In March, we were going to hopefully double growth again. So we had a really good consumer base, and what was fantastic, especially in the subscription business, our churn was really low. So churn is essentially if somebody signs up to your product, how long essentially they stay in the system for. So for us as a contact lens business, we would ship out lenses to people every month. If they don't cancel them, we keep shipping them lenses. So for us as a business, it's really important that we keep churn low and obviously keep putting people in the top of the funnel. That's how you grow the business. It would be easy to keep acquiring customers up here, but if they keep dropping out down here, it's pointless.
Are contact lenses considered essential?
We define it as a replenishable, and as such that it was definitely going to run out, and there'll always be a requirement to add in. And that was one of the biggest sort of requirements for when we set up the business. We wanted to work with a replenishable product.
So assuming that churn is rather low generally compared with, say, streaming or content or things like that.
Yeah, it's indifferent, right? Because although it's a replenishable product, people can choose to wear glasses. And a lot of our market research, speaking to consumers, is we ask customers, like, why do you wear contact lenses? Because there is a choice. You know, I wore glasses up until I was 26 and wanted to wear contact lenses for my wedding. And that's why I made the change. And we were talking previously, for me, you know, I had quite an active lifestyle till I was sort of 25, and I was wearing glasses. And the reason why I became less active was because I was taking my glasses off, trying to play sport, and I couldn't see. And I was scared to put lenses in my eyes, and so I was playing less and less sport, becoming, you know, less and less active. Until I obviously transitioned to wearing contact lenses, it gave me that freedom that I can see and do everything. Sounds really cliched, but you know, since I hit 30 this year, you know, I'm the most active I've probably ever been in my life, and I think contact lenses play a big part in that. I remember playing football about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was like, I can't see the ball, and this is an issue. And then your confidence is gone, and so you want to sort of stop playing football. But there's obviously, if you're working at home, and I wear my glasses, you know, you have to put your lenses in every time. Some people don't wear lenses every day. So there isn't necessarily a strict schedule that you're going to wear them diligently every day for 30 days and you're going to need a new box. Some people wear them every other day, or just wear them when they go and do yoga or anything. So everybody's got a unique sort of... Is
there a percentage? Do people have both? And does that change for this region?
It's really interesting. It's very hard to get, you know, actual statistics. We're doing more and more more speaking to our customers now, and I'd say, you know, the large majority are contact lens wearers through and through. I'd say we have like less than 15% on a bi-monthly plan, so they'll be buying lenses and getting shipped every other month. But the majority of our customers are getting lenses sent to them every 28 days.
Yeah. And does it change in this region? Are people lens wearers naturally in this region as compared with anywhere?
Yeah, well, again, it's one of those. This region is rife with crazy numbers.
Okay.
You know, especially, and I think it comes from people wanting to raise money. People just produce mental numbers. You know, our TAM, our total addressable market, is $60 billion, and you know, so the numbers can be.
Add a big, let's just add 1.2 billion people.
Exactly. So it's one of them, and so when we first actually initially tried to conceptualize what we were doing and tried to put into perspective how many people wear contact lenses, the numbers were just all over the place. I mean, I could spurt off numbers of the eyewear industry in the region, but
but what I'm getting to there. You don't have to change behavior too much. There isn't an adverse. People don't need to be educated on contact lenses.
No,
it's just about reaching people.
Yeah, the interesting statistic that we learn is 70% of contact lenses globally are still sold in stores.
Okay.
So it's an antiquated market, and a lot of that is tied to people getting their eyes tested, whether that's for the first time or getting them retested. And then you've got an optician there suggesting that you buy XYZ brand. And so, you know, traditionally, that's how it's been as a model, you know, but 30%, I mean, there's a company in the US that do a very similar thing to us called Hubble. You know, they've raised $70-80 million. They're doing $60+ million turnover every year now after 3 years, and they have less than 1% of the market share.
How much is a subscription?
Pretty much same price as ours.
How much is yours? So
essentially, in dirhams, it's 180 dirhams a month.
So how many subscribers would they be having?
So for 180 dirhams a month, you'd get these worth of lenses. So you select the prescription in both your eyes, and away you go. And cancel any time. We have a 50% off for the first month. Christian and I, we're big direct. I think that's people grew up wanting to be businessmen, you know, brand men, essentially. It's about building brand and going through that cycle.
Yeah.
And so there's an old Gillette tactic they created in the early 1900s, offer that's almost too good to be true. Capture them later with higher payments on them different. Yeah, Gillette.
And they were kind of disrupted by a dollar-shaped cup, which is direct to consumer.
I mean, Gillette had, I think, again, we spoke briefly on belief, such that when they really sort of came to prominence in the early 1900s, they obviously were backed and supported all the gear, all the razors and all the troops. And so when they came back into the US, they were using, you know, the Gillette products, and obviously everyone you share out what you use, they became the market leader and dominated the space.
So just an interesting story of a brand in the US, and if you could share that story around COVID, but related to a question, did you have with Christian, with your co-founder in early March, did you for a second think, could we do something that people need, maybe in the protective space or maybe in hygiene or something like that? Did you think to pivot?
I'll answer that first.
Okay.
Because we had many a conversation, and we spoke about it. You know, can we diversify our product range? And we came very close to placing an order on something that was in the eyewear space, but not, you know, we looked at the idea of some potential Hopi blue light lenses, you know, not contact lenses, but glasses, obviously with everybody being on their screens more at home.
So the notion is that people don't use contact lenses as much if they're not in the office. If they're at home, they put on glasses.
Well, they could still wear their sort of lenses, but they'll be looking at a computer screen all day at home. Do we want to, you know, provide a different product?
But you didn't think to kind of pivot completely and go into a mask business or something like that?
No, I think every man and his dog has thought about doing that, and so No, we obviously, our suppliers are based in Taiwan, and our sort of fulfillment centers in Hong Kong, and so we were inundated with emails from them saying, do you want thousands of N95 masks, do you want this? And we were like, look guys, we'd love to. There was a period of time when obviously there's a huge shortage of masks in the US, and I think the US government were buying N95 masks just for above trade price. And we thought, but no, we never contemplated deviating from.
You're early in what you're doing, and once you kind of, there's still a need for it during the pandemic, and you think you'll grow anyway.
So we sort of said absolutely not to that. I just we believed in what we were doing. It had legs. We were optimistic, thinking that this wasn't going to be around forever. But I think after about a month, going through all the the turmoil, sleepless nights, I think we both just looked at each other and just said, like, right, this is the new reality now. This is how we do business in the new world. And so we sort of looked at why our customers were cancelling their subscriptions. I said to you that we had a big increase in people dropping off. And we'd always ask customers why they were cancelling, because that information is critical for us to improve. And the large majority weren't cancelling because the product was poor. They were cancelling because they lost their job, or they weren't going to the office anymore, or they were going back to their home countries because of circumstances here. And I think firsthand we witnessed just what was really going on, for people. And using sort of that knowledge, we were like, okay, subscriptions might not be for everyone here. Let's decide that we don't want to lose customers purely because they don't want a subscription. So at that point, we sort of didn't pivot from products, but we sort of pivoted from our business model. We went from being a subscription only business to a product business. And we sort of said to ourselves, if you want our lenses, you can get them however you want to get them. Well, that's in a subscription where you'll save the most money. You can buy a 3-month or a 6-month bulk package, or you can just buy a one-off box, and we won't hassle you. So although we didn't shift away from the product offering, we just said,
and the business model adjusted.
Yeah, we just said to customers, if you don't want a subscription, if your circumstances have changed, we won't lose you as a customer because of your circumstances. We'll evolve, we'll grow, and we'll turn into a product business that sells. We sell contact lenses, whereas before, when we launched the business, we were a subscription contact lens business.
You were kind of led by the kind of model and how many people you can get and what.
I think it goes actually back to the Dollar Shave Club idea and how they disrupted Gillette. Gillette had 60, 70 plus market share for years and years and years, nearly a century. And Dollar Shave Club came in.
It was one of their competitors.
And Michael Jubin was fantastic. I don't know if you listened to the Guy Raz episode. It's fantastic on how I built this. And Michael talks about breaking up again the antiquated space. And again, it was all chance how we got into this space. I'd listen to it if I was you. Otherwise, I'm just going to repeat everything what he says. But he almost essentially fell into these razors. It wasn't I want to set up a razor business. He was offered, I think, 20,000 razors. You want to sell them, buy them, and he did. And they created this viral video, paid $4,000 for it. Yeah. I think it's one of the most watched YouTube.
Yeah, I remember the videos, but I never subscribed to their product.
It's absolutely brilliant. But so we go back to that model, and everyone thinks
branding. It was disruptive.
Everyone thinks you need to crack into a space. You need to take market share from somebody else. But I think when they were acquired by Unilever, they had less than 10% market share.
Okay.
That they're taken away from.
We will go back to the story I mentioned, but on this very point, on product and lenses, and you mentioned the eyewear space. I remember years ago I was working in the UK, and I worked on the team that we were setting up Specsavers on digital and on social media, and it was just fascinating to see they had 700 stores in the UK. And to think of that process when you say you're disrupting, that's just in one market, the opticians, the relationship they have with the customer. Is that a thought process that will Hopi be more than lenses in terms of that relationship and the range of products that Specsavers has? Yeah,
good question. I think there's already a player, Warby Parker in the space, one of the standard bearers for direct to consumer businesses.
They also have bricks and mortar, they also have stores.
Exactly. But if I just sort of deviate into why they have stores, in the US, obviously, the new rent is acquisition costs on Facebook and Instagram. it's such a huge market, hugely competitive market now that everyone's competing for ad space in the US. So many brands trying to capture your attention that, customer acquisition costs on social media is so high. And so brands have had to think, right, well, where can we go now that's cheaper than acquiring customers on social media? Can we get to our customers and see them and talk to them? And that's why they've gone to retail now, because rents are cheaper than acquiring customers on social media, and it's obviously increasing that relationship. So I think in a life cycle, yes, we would look at the bricks and mortar. I think the most important thing for us is the relationship with the customer.
Yeah, which you've proven in terms of responding to that sort of pricing model, and that you're listening all the time.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical. It is how you improve as a business. I think now the biggest metric as a business or as a brand is not how many customers you have, it's how strong your relationship is with those customers.
Yeah.
That is more important to me than going out. We could go out and spend a ton of money on Facebook and get loads of top of the funnel customers on a really great deal, but our retention on those customers is probably very low.
To stay on track and to stay focused, do you have a mission statement? Or we mentioned Away or Casper, these kind of almost listed companies in direct to consumer, Warby Parker, and what was the brand you mentioned who pivoted off air?
Judy.
Yeah. So you look at the kind of how things are evolving. How do you guys say, this is Hopi, this is where we're going?
I think mission statement, I remember producing pitch decks for my previous business, and when we started thinking about raising money, and it's like everyone has these statements, but really, do they actually matter? And I think we're a small business. There's two of us, it's Christian and I. It's literally the two of us, and I just think we practice what we preach. I think, through COVID, we had delays with deliveries, and we were hand delivering lenses ourselves, doing what we could to try and help customers. I've heard so many stories of brands, going AWOL when deliveries were delayed, some massive brands, which I won't name. And people's frustrations with these brands just grew and grew and grew. Whereas I think, we were upfront and honest. We answer our own emails. Christian at behoppy.com or Charles at behoppy.com. We'll send you an email. If there's a problem and delay, we're going to be there. We started Hoppy because contact lenses don't need to be so expensive. We're on your side. We're here to give you, honest pricing for a product that you need all the time. And I think, rather than say this is what we do, this is what we're about, I just think we are our customers. I wear the products every day. I pay full price for my lenses every month. I get them delivered every month. Last month they came literally 2 days, and I was going to be out of them. We are in the process.
I subscribe to a vitamin company in the UK, Heights, and you're looking at the nicely packaged, and you're looking at how many vitamins you have left, and then it arrives, and you're like, wow, these guys know what they're doing.
But I think we're users. We use the product. We're part of the process. We listen to the customers. Is that scalable? Who knows? But I think the moment the founders lose touch with the customers and lose that conversation, everything can potentially go west. So although we don't have a mission statement, I just think we are customers, our own brand.
So you stick, even as you scale and you grow, you're going to stay in touch with the customers.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it would be easy for us to potentially work with a social media company to help us with our social, but Christian does a fantastic job interacting with customers. I think that's one of our key USPs is our tone of voice and how we interact with customers. Yeah, we do polarize. It's not for everyone. We understand that, but I don't think you can please everyone. And so when we get comments about tone of voice, especially in the medicinal, boring space that we're in, that is us. It's us speaking. And yes, the brand voice is slightly different to how I speak and how Christian speaks. Being the customer, just being on their side is why I think long term, we will be able to maintain that from a culture perspective. We live and breathe the business as opposed to stepping in and somebody else answering this. And a lot of people have messaged saying, your customer service is brilliant. And we're like, why is it? Because, you responded to our message. The benchmark in this region is so low for customer service. And we get, compliments on that all the time. Or people say, I spoke to a member of your team the other day, and we're like, look, we don't have a team. You are speaking to the organ grinders. We are on the ground for you.
Do you have as well as the customer service and replying and that sort of thing, do you have a contact strategy? Because sometimes direct to consumers, in my experience, for me, if I'm a subscriber, sometimes it might be over. They might be trying too personalized. They might try and build a relationship. It's cool. I just want to buy something, and there might be too many scheduled emails. Like, what's the balance, or how do you look at that?
Yeah, it's difficult, and I think it goes back really, I think, to sort of. I'm not going to call it e-commerce anymore. I'm just going to call it commerce, because this is the future of business. And it really is. We look at open rates as our biggest sort of driver of what's happening. And everyone talks about email lists, and it's how many people they've got on that list. That's irrelevant. Yeah. You might have 10,000 people on your email list, but if 2% open, it's pointless.
Yeah.
So we look at open rates, the majority, and what people are up to. We use a smart system called Klaviyo, which is the market leader for e-commerce email integrations. We don't use anything fancy. We're not doing anything crazy. We're just learning from some of the biggest businesses in the West and trying to implement it here. So, Klaviyo for us is an amazing tool. We're looking at ways
for subscription management or for email.
No, it's purely for emails. So for,
CRM.
Yeah, purely for emails. Yeah. I think traditionally retail is all about. It's been all about a purchase, whether that's somebody walking in a store and purchasing something. The moment that transaction's been done, essentially for a business, it's finished. You've got the money, it's over. I think it's evolved now where a transaction, yes, it's the most important monetarily, but in terms of the grand scheme of things, in terms of customer happiness, lifetime value of a customer coming back, there are so many touch points that you mentioned, whether that's post-purchase, that's pre-purchase, asking for reviews, if we're on people's cases too much with too many emails. It's a fine line. It's all about testing.
It goes back to listening to the customer. Yeah.
Completely. We A/B test a lot of subject lines, what gets more open rates, what doesn't. We look at the content. We look at talking about our lenses, whether it's, scientifically, we could say we have 58% moisture content in our lenses, or we could say they're super comfy, no irritation. So we just look at everything on a really granular basis. We talk to customers. You can unsubscribe potentially from emails. You can click now with an option to receive less emails. So you can just go through the flows of just essentially post-purchase, which would be your order confirmation, shipping out, reminder emails. So it's up to a customer.
In terms of software and payments and things like that, how have you found the availability of software, and how have they worked in this region? Have you had to customize anything, or how have you kind of found that experience?
In this region, from my experience, everything's a nightmare, and everyone's I don't know what it is, but I think everyone's favored option here is
compared with where is Dreamland?
The States. From a business perspective, we set up with Stripe Atlas, which is Stripe's version of essentially a global company, and within 2 weeks we set up in the US. We had a fully US entity. We had a US bank account. I think it was within 10 days, and we could use Stripe as a payment gateway. For me, the best payment gateway out there. And whereas my previous business, trying to set up a business bank account here is, there's no point talking about it, because that's all we talk about. But people do have payment gateways in this region. Of course, yeah. I think there's and what's amazing now is to see payment gateways in this region align themselves with a lot of software from the States. Paid for, Checkout, amazing. Checkout's an amazing company. All obviously Shopify set up and everything. But for us to get to market quickly, we did things slightly differently, and allowed us then to do everything else locally a little bit, in our own time. We didn't want to be in a position where we were waiting for protocol in this region to then set up the business. Like, can we get set up quickly? Can we get going? It gives us time to then go and do what we need to do after that.
Do you think so? Obviously, the Middle East in a market is known as an emerging market, and the kind of GDP is lower than the US. Do you think that this region will emerge as a market? Like, put that into context. There used to be the BRIC nations, and obviously China emerged. China was a place where, made in China, as opposed to big global companies that the US is envious of. But Brazil didn't emerge in the same way. India is emerging. Do you think that this region will emerge?
Good question. I mean, I had a good conversation with a gentleman called Emmett Shine in the US. Emmett used to run an agency called Gin Lane, which essentially built some of the most famous brands, in the direct-to-consumer space, hugely knowledgeable, and we were speaking about internet ecosystems. And I think this is my own opinion. This region is too focused on catching up, whereas I think it can surpass. I think if you look at some of the businesses that are evolving and coming to fruition now, are almost carbon copies of businesses that have been existing in the Western world for 5-10 years. And rather than doing things slightly different, it seems to be we're just sort of catching up, trying to copy, and so you'll always remain behind. There's some incredibly talented people here. There's access to capital here like there potentially might not be in the Western world. So in my opinion, if we keep trying to catch up, then they'll never catch up. But I think there needs to be an idea of let's do some things differently here. There's like Cameo have been doing a great job in the States and in Europe. It's an amazing business. How exciting. Yeah. And obviously we now have a Cameo equivalent in the region here. Here. We had, Klarna, Afterpay have been doing amazing things to restructure payments on e-commerce. And now in this region we have Tabby and Spotty Me. They're all doing, the Afterpay. So it's seemingly like the region just comes sort of maybe 2-3 years behind.
But they are happening, and in some markets they don't happen. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe they might never catch up, but the GDP gap with the US and the 320 million people in the US and the 320 million people in advertising alone, there's $200 billion spent for the same population as $4 billion is spent here.
Yeah.
So catching up is if you're catching up a little bit, it's not that bad a thing.
It's on that it's actually interesting. I think as COVID has obviously been hugely detrimental across the board. I think even in small instances like with cash on delivery payments have been hugely prominent in this region for years. I know Saudi Arabia banned the cash on delivery payments for a period of time, and I think those sort of steps, moving, MasterCard, Visa, all their reports, online payments. Cash on delivery was like 75% a couple of years ago, compared to, pretty much all online payments are done online with credit cards in the Western world. So I think those sort of steps will help increase closing the gap. And I think it's funny, like in all industries, I ask a lot of friends I have outside the region, what do you think of the region? And obviously everyone thinks it's very fragmented, but in terms of population size of the whole GCC, it's colossal and it's unified by one language. And, that's part of my previous business. You looked at this whole space. Unlike a lot of Europe is unified.
Many languages,
whereas here it's one language. So I think, it's amazing, I think, what we're seeing now, especially a lot of brands are popping up, even if you're just seeing all the bakery brands, etc., people, cooking things or sweet brands, whatever it is. I think I've never seen that boom of young entrepreneurs in this region before. Yes, there is a lot of talk of people setting up businesses, but I think in the last 3 months.
It's great. And it's like you mentioned, it not all focused on these massive valuations and growth. They're kind of going, well, I can set this up without the cost of rent and I can deliver a product to a customer, be it, bakery or contact lens.
Exactly. I think it's amazing. I think, look, the barrier to entry to setting a business up in the States is very low. The barrier to entry here has traditionally been quite high. And I think that will change over time. I think it's always changing. But I think if we go on a macro level, barrier to entry to manufacturing is really low now. If somebody had asked me 5 or 10 years ago, right, can you go and get some contact lenses manufactured? I'd be like, I haven't got a clue how to do that.
Yeah.
Or, can I go and do this or do that? You look at the amount of clothing brands starting in the UK or in the US, there's a new one set up every 10 minutes because manufacturing is accessible now. We managed to fly to Taiwan and speak to a whole host of manufacturers about, essentially white labeling a product. And this, the barrier to entry is so much lower now that, even if you go on AliExpress, you can find anything.
AliExpress is the payments for Alibaba?
So you got Alibaba, AliExpress is you get quicker delivery. So a lot of people use it potentially to source samples.
Like Prime, right?
Yeah, essentially, right. So you find out suppliers, and for me, if you find something on AliExpress, you go and meet people and go and see. A lot of people just buy off it and sell it, which is essentially drop shipping, right? But you can get access to products now, and so it's whether you might want to sell on Amazon, you might want to set up your own store. Shopify done amazing. Big commerce, they IPO'd yesterday. The tools are all there.
Shopify and Amazon.
We don't do Amazon, so we just sell purely through Shopify. We don't do Amazon because while Amazon might give you great infrastructure, access to customers, exposure, you don't control any of the customer data. Amazon controls all of that. I'm a huge Jeff Bezos fan. He's, I'm completely blown away and mesmerized what he's created. But from a brand perspective, I would always stay away from Amazon because you don't get the customer data, and so we just sell purely on Shopify.
So, Charlie, you raised a seed round. 2 questions around that. What's the next step? What are you looking at? And related to that, what do you choose on growth? Is it manufacturing yourself? Is it regional? And what does a company like Hopi invest in? Yeah,
good question. Yeah, so we did raise, which was I had a lot of respect for Omar Kasim and what he'd done in this region, and he essentially came into the party to help us. Essentially,
he has a venture. He exited an e-commerce company.
So Omar formerly had Jado Pado, which was acquired by Noon, and now he's building a new business called Nomod, and so it was that e-commerce experience that obviously we wanted to try and extract, and that's been hugely beneficial. It took us to market. We had grand plans, and I'm 30 now, and I'm blown away by. I've always been interested in business, and I always thought that I wanted to go out and raise a ton of capital, have a big team, do crazy things and everything. And I think Christian and I, especially over COVID, we sat down and really reevaluated what we wanted from life. And we don't wear suits. We're not suit wearers. We don't want to go and raise a ton of cash and be held accountable by people that don't necessarily know our product or know the space. We don't want a huge team for the sake of a huge team. We want to be as lean and profitable as possible. Because we love what we do. The last thing we need is look at Casper, where they just got to a point from a mattress company where they were selling mattresses at a loss, hoping that one day they could IPO and do that. Peloton, another example, on-demand fitness. You get the products, hardware, software. They were struggling. John Foley again spoke a long time that they were losing money, a lot of money, and then suddenly COVID happens, timing, and they absolutely crushed it. Mirror is another example, losing a lot of money. They've just been acquired by Lululemon for $500 million. So we were very different to that. So we looked at growth in a such, how quickly can we become sustainable? How can we get to profitability as soon as possible? We don't need vanity metrics. Raising money only just makes the runway the same size. You're just going down it a hell of a lot quicker, and so the pressure increases. I'm not saying we're scared of pressure, but we want to be in control of our own business.
So potentially you would remain a private company.
Essentially. I think now you're seeing so many, especially in e-commerce, so many new ways of being able to raise money to be able to push the business forward. You're looking at Clearbank, it's a Canadian, essentially VC firm. Now, because obviously with Shopify and Stripe, all your payments are there to be seen by anyone. You can't fudge numbers, in a deck. They can tap into your numbers every month, and they can offer you money based on your revenue output and take a small share away from each sale. So, there's so many ways now that you can grow businesses. It's not necessarily going to a VC and getting, large cash sums. So for us, it's how we can remain sustainable, keep the majority of our business in our control. And on growth, we looked at Hopi as a brand, and the big plan obviously was regionally expansion. We'll never do different products with Hopi, but obviously the US market has become really interesting to us. It's a Western brand, really, in a sense, how we built it. So can we go and take it to new markets to grow, as opposed to diversifying the product offering?
To do that the way you are,
I think in a grand scheme, we love direct to consumer, we love that element and brand building and relationships with community. For me, I don't think I'll be selling contact lenses with Hopi, when I'm 50, when I'm 60. We'd love to look at other product areas eventually down the line. Obviously, everything's on Hopi now, but for me, there's so many opportunities out there with stagnated, antiquated markets that I'm blown away by the space. So I'm sure down the line there could be some change ups, but Hopi will always be a contact lens company, and our growth will be fueled by increasing to different markets.
And if you were to invest, it would be on people, on marketing, on product, or R&D. What do you think is needed, or is a mix of everything?
Yeah, I think we look at the business with granular data, right? We know we know the exact product costs, we know the acquisition costs to acquire a customer, we know our shipping costs, we know everything down to a T. I'm not saying other businesses don't, but when we know the customer value to us, we have their lifetime value predicted, how long they'll stay in the system for. So in terms of, we know what acquiring a customer means to us. So for us, investing in the business would be in more product, because especially with a direct to consumer business or manufacturing, the more you buy, the better price you get. So we can reduce costs massively by buying more product. And then it goes back to an acquisition game. Like, there's a great stat that 40% of every VC dollar raised in the US is spent on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
It's an acquisition game. It is a game in that sense. So for us, it would be increasing product and acquiring more customers. And when I say acquiring, it sounds really, it's like we've just put a head or a number on somebody. We don't mean it like that. It's purely through, your Facebook or Instagram channels where, you'd buy through an ad, and roughly speaking, we know how much that costs to acquire a customer. And then it's over to us to work our magic to make sure that they stay in the system for as long as possible.
And do you have a lifetime value metric of a customer for Hopi?
Yeah, that we've got, there's a lot of ways of calculating lifetime value in sort of a commerce space. So we've worked that out. We know exactly what it's a combination of sort of churn, average order value, but as well in our space, it's slightly different to other products in as such that if you buy contact lenses, unless you get laser eye surgery, you're going to be in the system. You're going to be wearing lenses for the rest of your life, right? Yeah. Unless something crazy happens and your eyesight is perfect when you wake up tomorrow. But so we have the added benefit as a actual lifetime value of a customer can be a hell of a lot more. But yeah, we have a pretty sort of nailed on metric.
Don't go blind.
Yeah, exactly.
It should be fine. But it's interesting. So just going back to the kind of, that was an interesting statistic on the acquisition, and we see how good a job the platforms and the tech giants have done on performance, lower funnel ad products.
Yeah.
And as you said, they've done a good job on delivery, on product and self-serve and all these different things, but also on extracting that spend from companies. But going back to Dollar Shave Club, they did it a lot on YouTube per se, and YouTube don't have a performance. But at the time they didn't. What are you doing with Hopi that isn't lower funnel? What are you doing on brand, and what's your view on that?
Good question. So my first affinity with Jeff Bezos came from a book called The Everything Store by Brad Stone, and an amazing book. It talks really about the early days of Amazon, why they do what they do, and how, in my opinion, you can't beat Bezos. You can't. Unbelievable business, unbelievable bloke. As much as everyone says he's got too much money and all this, from a business perspective, what he's created, who he's sadly say obliterated, he's shut down antiquated markets. Look at how they did with Kindle, and what they did with Kindle and ebooks is phenomenal. And in Amazon, one of the biggest things they talk about is flywheels. And a flywheel essentially is something that stores and produces a lot of energy, right? This is what they talk about, and how you can create as many flywheels as possible. So essentially, from our perspective, it's a sociology associated to keeping your customers happy. And in turn, if your customers are happy, they will share that with like-minded other customers. So it's generating these flywheels that will allow you to grow your business organically. And that organic growth is such an interesting perspective. You look at the rise of Hi Smile. Everyone thinks Conor McGregor, Kylie Jenner and everything with their Instagram and sort of partnerships. But before that, they were working with 20 people with 20,000 followers, using those influencer campaigns to reach people. And that allowed them then to go and pay the big bucks for Conor and Kim and Kylie and everything. So organic growth is absolutely critical to us. So it's how can we make our product easily shareable? Can we infiltrate a family? If the mother or father buys our lenses, can we ensure that they then tell their children to buy our lenses? And it's about post-purchase experience. It's where we think we differentiate ourselves massively. Somebody can set up a contact lens brand tomorrow, no problem. But I think for us, it's not necessarily the product is good, but that shouldn't be the deciding factor of your business. Of course, it should be good. It's everything that goes with it. So whether it's, we've redesigned our shipping box now, creating, an Instagrammable product. it goes back. People want to take who wants to take a photo of a white medicinal box? Nobody. So that's why we designed a colourful box. Can we get people posting it on social media?
Yeah, you sent us a nice little gif of it this morning.
Yeah, a nice little gift. But it's those elements. It's everyone loves a flat lay, right? You see Aesop has grown immeasurably because people love taking photos of the bottles on their kitchen tops or bathroom counters.
Yeah.
And it's that sharing. And so for us, it's creating that flywheel. Can we create a product and an experience that people rely on? Because people need lenses every month. And can we be that trusted standard bearer to make sure that you never run out of lenses? Because if you run out of lenses, you're scratching around, looking in your gym bag, and it can be a nightmare. So it's a case of, can we just instill trust into consumers that then they are willing to do our sort of business for us and spread the word organically? So it's that for us. We have a top of the funnel plan, but I think as well at the same time, it's can we make sure our customers are selling Hopi for us?
Interesting. That's all we've got time for today, but thanks a lot for sharing the story.
That went so
Charlie,
quickly, by the way.
No, you're full of information, and it'd be great to chat again down the line.
No, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Hey guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.